Hey guys, welcome to the channel, welcome to the video. Today we're going to be going over a pressure flaking a slab. Kenton, I know that I have your kit that's ready to go for you. It's been really rainy here, so it's been hard for me to get outside and do some of the you know, more of the percussion stuff, but I thought I'd show you this because I'm going to send a bunch of these to you. These are going to be in your box. You're going to have several of these. And this is a nice way of getting instant gratification because all you have to do is use your pressure flaking skills to turn this into a point. So I'm going to put my safety glasses on. And people have different ways of looking at this. I prefer to start with the tip because if it's going to break, I'd prefer it break in the beginning. But what you're doing is you're going to push down to create the pressure and out to pluck the flake off. And that is the same thing that you're going to do when you're using percussion. You know, when you're using a billet, it's the same thing. When you're angling on that rock, you're angling down and out. It's the same process, but this will get you some nice, fun, instant gratification right away. So I've zoomed in close. I hope this helps. I have sharpened my pressure flaker a little bit. Okay, so I'm going to put that in my pad. I'm just going to push down and out, just like I'm scooping ice cream. When I move my hand, that's just me letting the flake fall out. And even better, what I could do is I could be, instead of out here all open and loose, I could be squeezing with my leg. So let's try that. That's the best technique. Go. And as you can see, that is starting to create a flake pattern. There's that little island in the middle, but that's no big deal. We'll get that on the second pass, or we'll get it from the other side. There we go. And what I'm doing is I am lining up. I don't know if this is picking this up. I can't see through my glasses, but right where that delta is, where that delta stops, you want to line that up right to the edge of your pad. So here's my delta, here's my pad. I'm going to slide that right up to the edge. Because when you take this flake, it feathers out. So it's going to kind of clean up some of that stuff you might have missed. Keep going. Same process. And I'm doing some overshot flakes here. It's not essential that you do that, but it's just what I'm doing. Again, taking that delta, that high ridge delta, and I'm lining that right up with the edge of my pad. See if I can capture that. So here's my delta. Here's my pad, where my groove is, and this delta is going to end up right on the edge. Of that pad. And again, I'm just pushing down and out. Just experiment with this. If you take a couple of the preforms and they don't really work out for you, don't worry about it. Boy, is this fun. So I'm going to speed up the process a little bit. Alright, so we have that first pass made. Hopefully you can see that. First pass right there. And we still have some sawed edges over here, so that's the next plan of attack. So we did grind it, but I'm a huge believer that there's no such thing as over-grinding. And some of that is because the dust that's left over is really helpful when it comes from taking the flakes off. So we're going to start again from the tip. I prefer to start from the tip. Some people start from the base. It's one of those things where, you know, everyone says practice perfectly. Which is true, but the fact of the matter is it's all about the results. So if you do something that is different but still gives you the results you're looking for, then I'd say you're doing it right. Just lining this up. Sorry if I'm going too fast, but I'm lining this up. There's a ridge right here in the pad. And you want to take that ridge and put it as close to the next flake you're going to take, because you want that flake to drive through that pad. That will eliminate, you know, any lack of support or pressure on either side. You don't want to push too much in the middle there, because you will snap it. You want to kind of like a bar chord, if you've ever played guitar. Just support it enough to keep it in place. Push down and in like you're scooping ice cream. Take that flake. That's how you work a slab. This is a lot of fun. You'll have a lot of fun with this, Kenton. You want to try and make sure you drive at least halfway across, and each time you take these, let's see if I can get this here. So this right here is the last flake that I took, and you can see the delta there, that ridge. See that high spot? That is what I'm going to line up with the ridge of my pad. See how I line that up? See what the ridge is and where the delta is. That way, when I push that flake off, it's going to pop through that ridge, or that groove. Give me what I need. If any of this is unclear, or if I'm going too fast, please let me know. And I'm just keeping on riding that edge. Every time I get that next flake, wherever the high point is, I bring that to my ridge, like literally connected to my ridge. It seems like maybe you're taking a flake off too far off, but you have to remember that that flake feathers, so you'll be fine. Alright, getting down to the edge, at the very end. Sometimes towards the end here, that's where it gets the most difficult. Alright, so that's not bad. See what we got there? And you can see there's some, some stuff on the bottom here that needs to be cleaned up. That's alright. Let's see if I can get that closer. Because we can get that from the bottom coming upward, which is what we're going to do. Because we want to make sure that we're working this piece very evenly. Didn't really get it all on that one. Gotta clean that groove out. Sometimes it gets stuck. Shoot, that was not a good sound. Alright, so I do have a little bit of an island right here. Right in the middle there. So let's see if I can pop that off from my edges. And if you have that island in there and it stays there, it's not a big deal. Yeah, I'm probably just going to leave that. That crushing sound is never good. That means you're not driving a flake, that means you're just crushing the edges. Yep, see that sound before? That was driving a flake. That is driving a flake. Alright, so we're going to have this this little island in here, and that's okay. Maybe we'll get rid of it when we notch, maybe we won't. We'll just have to wait and see. Doesn't matter. So we have our front side done. See how nice that looks? Still have some pretty flat edges. Now we have to do the back side. So in true fashion, we'll rinse and repeat. We're going to start with the grinding. Makes a nice rough surface for us, but also some of that powder that remains gives us a little extra grip. We haven't done much with the base, but we're going to grind that too. So now we're I lost some pieces. That's all right. So now we're going to flip over to, instead of the piece that we just made, the back piece that has nothing really done to it. We're going to work on that. Same thing. I like to start with a tip. If you put your finger under the bottom of this, right, give it some support, that helps tremendously. One thing that you want to avoid is end shock, and what end shock is when you have zero support and you're working one point, either the front or the back, and it just snaps in half because there's no support on it. So it's good to keep your fingers under these parts as best you can. Also keeping in mind that you do run the risk of driving a flake into your hand. It's sort of one of those things you just have to kind of feel it out and get the hang of it, if you will. So let's work on that tip. Hopefully we don't break it. There we go. Again, just trying to push on that edge down and pluck out. That's what's going to get us our flake. And obviously a little bit more gentle towards the tip because that's more likely to break. Every time we do that, the edge that we've created, right? Hope that's catching that. The edge that we've created, that delta gets pressed right directly against the groove in the pressure pad. See that? And that sets us up for our next flake. Here's a really good example. See that, where that delta is, and I have it pressed right against the edge of the pad. That will help you take that next flake. Just going to keep doing that as I drive it down the edge. I'm going to try and speed this up a little bit. Just letting this fall. Every time I open my hands up, I'm just letting the glass fall out, the obsidian. Excuse me. See, I've got this one side done. Now it's time to get the other side. Like every single time, I'm going to start with grinding. Even though I've ground both edges, still going to grind it again. Start with the tip. I'm going to be careful not to break it. Take small flakes. And you might break it. If you do, it's no big deal. Just shortens your point a little, that's all. I'm just driving this down. I'm not showing a lot, because I've already showed what you need to see. No use dragging this out. Down and out, just like scooping frozen ice cream. Like I said, down, out. Build the pressure that's going to build up in that glass, and then pluck it out, which is going to take that flake. Good practice. Now, if you get to thin spots, use your common sense. Maybe you don't need to pluck off a flake where it's already super, super thin, where it could break the point. Shouldn't really be that way, but sometimes it accidentally happens. Okay. So I'm going to flip it around, look for some high spots. There's a high spot over here on this side. Let's take care of that. Try and keep everything even. Really enjoying this new hand pad. Just trying to kind of make this even as best I can. I'll flip back and forth, find the high spots. Like you can see, there's a high spot right here on the tip, right there where my finger is. So I'm going to try and pressure flake that off. That's kind of what you want to do. Just look for those high spots and take them off as you need. I mean, in a perfect world, if you're fantastic at flint knapping, you won't have to do that because everything will be super even and equal, but you know, let's face it, it's not where most of us are. So just do your best to keep everything even. And what that does is that helps eliminate the opportunity for your point snapping. Because in a couple minutes we're going to zigzag this. Try and get rid of as many of the thick spots as you can. Oops, sorry, I thought you could see most of this. Guess I'm a little bit far out. So you can see I do have some stuff here that needs to be taken care of. That's fine, not worried about that. Just using these edges to pop off as much as I can. Down and out. And this will be a learning curve, Kenton, so you'll excuse me, you'll need to practice this. This does not come overnight, so don't get discouraged. Just trying to get off all those sawed edges. I think I'm going to be able to do it too. Oh, shoot. I still did it. So just going to try and trim up some of these thick edges a little bit. Just a bit, not a lot. Because you'll snap them if you do. Just a bit. Alright, so let's see what we have so far. We have this piece here. Nice flake pattern on this side, nice flake pattern on this side. Still have some flat edges. There's a number of ways we can tackle those. The best way, I guess, is to just continue to flake down those edges to get them thinner. I mean, you could probably zigzag from this point, but it's going to, you know, you get some thick edges that might not be as desirable as what you want. So let's just try and thin these edges out just a little bit. So same thing we've always done, just taking this down and out, plucking off those flakes. Just thinning it out as much as we can, because we're going to zigzag this in a minute. You can see we're thinning this edge out a lot more than it has been. I'm not used to the camera angle being this close, so I'm getting used to it. So that's pretty thin. Now let's work on the other side, see if we can thin that out a bit. It's pretty thick here on the tip. Want to be careful on the tip that we don't bust it off. Back and forth, just like whittling a stick. You know what it wants to look like. It's just a matter of getting it there. So I have a couple of thin spots in the middle that I want to be careful of, because if you get it too thin in the middle, it greatly increases your chances of snapping it in half. Like, really greatly, like exponentially. So you're better off to keep the middle as thick as you can, keep the ends a little bit thinner, thin everything down that way. Alright, so this is pretty thin. We could thin this down a lot more if we wanted to. And probably, you know, best practices would dictate that we do. But for the sake of this video, I want to show you how you take these flat edges, whether they be this thick or a lot thinner, and turn those into sharp edges. And how you do that is you zigzag, and you literally take a flake off this way, flip it, take a flake off that way, flip it, take a flake off that way, and that's what you're doing. So let's grind again, and I hope this video is helpful. But please ask questions if you have any questions. It'll be a lot easier when I can get outside. Lighting's better. So what I'm going to do is I want to change these flat edges here into sharp edges. The best way to do that is to pop off a flake. And I think in this particular situation I'm going to start with the base. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put my pressure flaker on there, like not quite as deep as when I'm going to push a flake off, but a little bit more shallow. And I'm going to try and pop this flake off. Okay? So here I am at the very tip, right? Let's see if I can get a good image of this. Instead of being down here more, I'm going to be up towards the top. Yeah, I'm not getting a good image here, but instead of being down here further, I'm going to be closer to the top. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to try and take that ground edge right here and just pluck off to the side. Oh, it must be getting late. It's getting dark because it's getting light outside. There we go. So you can see what happened there. It went from that ground edge to that sharp edge. And now I'm just going to flip it upside down and do the other side, because what I'm looking for is when I take that edge off and it flakes down, that creates what we call a platform. Okay, so I can take a flake off that, and when I flip it over, there should be another sharp edge that I can take another flake off of. Let me see if I can show you that. Okay, so there's a good example right there. You can see there's that sharp edge there, and then here's where the ground part was. And if I flip this over, there's another flat spot for me to try and pluck a flake off of. So here, let's see, can't really see. Here you can see where I'm going to take that flake. You can see the ground part. Just going to keep doing that back and forth, and that's why they call it a zigzag, because you just keep going back and forth. So again, you can see the part that's been zigzagged and the part that's still ground. And you're just taking the high spots, which in this case is going to be up here, right? Yeah, it's going to be up here. Pop that down, which is going to create another low spot, which when you flip it over, yep, pop it down that way. So, first of all, this way. I'm going to flip it around, pop it this way, flip it around. I'm zigzagging that edge off. Oop, that was not a great flake, but that's okay. We can always fix stuff. Just popping that edge off. You'll see it. You'll see the low spots. Those low spots are where you're going to want to hit. If they're not low, then don't hit them. Once you get to the tip, make sure you're giving lots of support under here. You don't want to be pushing in the middle there. You'll snap that off every time. You want to prevent end shock, which means you want to support as much of this piece as you possibly can. So as much of your hand that can be on here as possible is best, except for pressing right there in the middle. See how sometimes I'm doing kind of a double flake? That's okay. Don't get caught up in technique. You'll know what you need to do, what needs to be done. Alright. Alright, so check out what we've done here. We've taken an edge that looked like this, right? We've turned it into this. Nice, sharp edge. Could be touched up some more, of course, but... So we're going to do the same to this side, and we're going to do the same thing to the base. Let's start with this side. Just flipping back and forth. That's why they call it zigzagging. Every time I take a flake, you can see I'm knocking off a little bit of that ground edge, and I'm turning it into that sharper edge. Okay, that's what that zigzagging is doing. It doesn't have to be aggressive. It just has to knock that flat edge off, turn it into something sharp. Always want to hit a low spot. Find the low spot. Turns out I need to hit this side twice. That happens. Sometimes you need to hit the same side more than once. You don't always zigzag back and forth. Sometimes you have to hit that same side an extra time. Just have to look at the way the stone looks. Find that low spot and hit it. Just enough to take off the edge. If you hit too aggressively, you'll snap the stone in half. You'll learn it the hard way, but that's what we do. I shouldn't say that because now I'll probably snap it myself. Just the edge. Just enough to pop off that ground edge. And like I said, you could pressure flake this a lot thinner before you start zigzagging. But for the sake of time, just going to do this. Just changes the convexity of your point. Yep, see, now you need to hit this side a second time on the same side because of the way it flaked off. Maybe even a third. Yeah, as we get to this point, I probably should have thinned that point out a little bit more. I'm going to try and thin it out now. Oh, I broke the tip off. So that's what happened. I should have thinned that tip out a lot more than I did. And what happened was this tip was way thicker than the rest of the material. I always want to keep the middle part as thick as possible. The ends should be thinner. And I did not do that. Oop, I dropped it. And what happened was when I tried to make that point, I broke the tip off. So now what I have is this, which is still fine. We're going to put a tip on that and pretend like it never happened. But it's a good example of why you never want your tip or your base to be thicker than the rest of your point, because it just encourages end shock. And I'm not going to talk a whole lot about what end shock is right now, but basically it is what happens when the vibrations go through your point and it doesn't have the structural integrity to handle that. And that's generally when your ends are thicker than your middle. So I'm doing a little bit of shaping here. And when it comes to the pressure flaking, I know sometimes I get a little bit distracted, and I apologize if I'm not, giving enough information to be instructional. Now I'm doing a little bit of shaping because of that one wacky side that I got. So now how I zigzagged the sides. Okay, now I have to zigzag the base. And again, I could probably pop a few more flakes off there, and maybe I will, just to thin it a little bit before I zigzag it, but you can zigzag it at any point you choose. It's just the thicker it is, sometimes the more challenging it can be. So I'm just popping off flakes here. Down and out. Scoop an ice cream. And now I think I'm going to zigzag it. Good starting flake. There we go. That was actually a little bit more than I needed. That's right. Each time I take a flake, it's creating a low spot on the other side. Trying to speed this up for the sake of time. Couple of last minute just adjustments here. And we're going to have ourselves a nice little preform. So, we still have some shaping to do. I'm not going to drag this video out. But once you get to that preform state, next thing you're going to do is you're going to take your grinder, just get everything that doesn't want to be there off. And what you have is a nice little pressure flaked preform. Still needs a lot of work. But it's good to start with. Already sharp. Needs to be sharpened a little bit. Needs to be shaped. So I hope you can see this. I know it's kind of dark down here. As soon as it gets lighter, Kenton, I'll get out there and I'll do some better videos for you. But this is a good video on how to pressure flake a point. A little stubborn piece over here. Needs to come off. Sometimes you get these little islands in the middle. I think we're just going to leave this one. Alright, hope this was helpful. Let me know what you think. Yeah, lighting down here is terrible. I know, I'm sorry. Alright, so, everybody, hope you're having a good time. Hope you're being safe. Don't forget, be nice, be a good friend, be a good family member, be a good human being, and let's love each other during this time, and we will all get through this. I'll talk to you later. Bring Bird out.